What is going on, YouTubulous? John Reddy coming at you today with a little step back. We're going to go back to the first episode that I did because I reviewed a video from Law and Crime Network. However, since then, ATA, Audit the Audit, which I will leave a link to their channel down below, has done their thing with this video. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with ATA, but they run magic, okay? So I use them a lot in my daily job, day-to-day basis, because they go over so many case files and so many case laws that are arbitrary that most people don't know. It's great to have that reference point. With that being said, there are a couple of things that I disagree with on their opinionated section of it, or what I deem is to be opinionated. So we're going to review ATA's video and kind of compare it to ours and see what's different. Without further ado, I'm excited. I've found some old files through case management. So here is the newest intro that I actually made like 8 years ago.
These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
All right, so before we get into it, I want to move this over just a little bit and tell you, I don't have any fucking sponsors, guys, okay? I'm new. I don't have sponsors. But what I do have is clothing. I make my own clothing. You see these right here? This is the first ones that I made based off of my logo here. So if you go to my website, hoondout.com, that's HOONDOUT.com, you can find some awesome threads just like the ones I'm wearing today, the pineapple grenade. You see, the great thing about it is these come in sets of two. The one I wore last time is yellow. This one's purple, but the collars match. So this collar's yellow, whereas the other shirt, the collar's purple. Now I have a blue and green setup as well. Those are interchangeable. It's all great. Just go check it out. I will leave a link to the website, and these specifically, I have them in polos as well. The polos are perfect. I can't even explain it. They're cheap. These run 25, polos run 25, t-shirts run 15 bucks. So go on over. You can check out my website. Go buy my merch. It's got some awesome stuff on there, and you're supporting a guy who's trying to bring real truth and transparency to the law enforcement world. All right, so let's bring it in a little bit. And let's go ahead and switch over to the video. Great. Now, as we said, this here is Audit the Audit channel. You can go check them out. They're great, but we're just going to go ahead and jump straight into this piece, okay? Now, if you see me fast forwarding through some parts, it's because it's stuff that's irrelevant and has already been covered.
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and
Thank
what
you.
and the right and wrong of police interactions. On October 16, 2021, Officer Paul Guab and Officer Holly Harris of the Dallas Police Department pulled over single father Silvester Hayes while he was driving to pick up breakfast for his children in Dallas, Texas.
And
Despite
see,
the
these
fact
are all
Mr. Hayes
facts that
spells
we
his
didn't
first
know
name
from Law and Crime.
Silvester, the officers believe they have apprehended another man named Silvester Hayes, who spelled his first name Sylvester, and was wanted for a family violence warrant.
So something worth remembering here is we don't know what happened up to this. All we can assume is that this is a legal traffic stop. Whether or not the cop knew that the guy in there was Silvester or not is irrelevant. Even if he had viewed the person and said, hey, that's Silvester, that would still be a legal traffic stop because you're stopping based off of seeing somebody. But as we know, he didn't see this guy because it's the wrong guy to end with. However, had there been a proper traffic violation and a stop, this traffic stop would be deemed legal. So where I assume we're picking up at is they have stopped this guy for a traffic violation. They have learned that his name is Silvester, and someone who was at that traffic stop has said, hey, I have warrants on a Silvester, or there is warrants on a Silvester, last name same. And from there, they would need to positively identify this man as the one that they are locking up. Now, theoretically, they should already have a driver's license in hand. If we are at the point that I believe we are, they should already have a driver's license in hand, which means they should have already run the driver's license name, date of birth, and number and verified that through the warrant. Now, they have not done that yet, so we're assuming that all they have done is said, hey, that name matches the guy that I know we have warrants for. Let's go ahead and detain him. And that is legal. You can be detained while they verify the validity of a warrant. Officer safety reasons. Editor could cut to many videos of officers going, hey, wait right just here. And as they're walking off, they get shot in the back or something crazy. So asking an individual to step out of a car and let me detain you while I verify your identity is not something out of the ordinary. Let's get that straight, okay? Pennsylvania v. Mims says that a cop can take you out of your vehicle for any reason necessary during a traffic stop. He can also ask you to stay in your vehicle. It doesn't matter. This is something I feel very, very, very passionate about. People don't understand the laws, and it's so simple. If a cop tells you to get out of the car, you must frickin' do it, okay? No questions. Now, let's move on.
I'll explain it to you. I know. Step out. I'll explain.
And see, this is where I'm going at, man. I don't give you permission to do that. Now,
Right now, you are being detained. Come on and step out.
there are some issues with that being possibly a search, but in this instance, the courts would never consider that a search by reaching in and opening the car door based off of the circumstances that are going on. That would not be considered a search. Again, if he would just, I understand the frustration of not knowing what's going on, but if you weren't acting like a complete dick about it, they could easily explain to you what's going on.
Officer Guab
Step
reaches
out.
inside the driver's side window, unlocks and opens the door, and orders Mr. Hayes to step out of the vehicle because he is being detained. When Mr. Hayes refuses to step out, the officers begin to pull on him, and Mr. Hayes remains seated in the vehicle. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which has jurisdiction over Texas, has repeatedly held that the Fourth Amendment is implicated when a law enforcement officer reaches into a vehicle's interior space. For example, in the 1993 case of U.S. versus Riles,
Something I'm going to go over here. If you've never seen ATA, they literally go over everything. So you're going to see here what I assume is he's going to go through what I just said about reaching inside of a car could be deemed as a search, and he's going to cite case law that says it is. But then he's going to probably, if I know him well enough, he's going to come back and say, but there's also case law that says that under these circumstances, this does not constitute a search. Or it'll say an officer is allowed to do this under these circumstances. And that's why I'm going to just go ahead and let this play through so you can kind of see how ATA does this stuff if you've never watched their channel before.
Fifth Circuit concluded that a state trooper intruded inside a space that, under most circumstances, is protected by a legitimate expectation of privacy when he opened an individual's car door and stuck his head inside without a search warrant. More recently, the same court stated in the 2007 case of U.S. versus Meredith that, quote, opening a vehicle's door or piercing the interior airspace constitutes a search, and reasonable suspicion must exist prior to a search. Accordingly, the court
Notice that actually requires you to physically, not visually.
Search of Mr. Hayes' vehicle for purposes of the Fourth Amendment by reaching inside.
You can establish probable
Additionally,
cause
Section
for a search through
38.03
visual.
of the text-
Also, real quick, passive resistive is resisting arrest. Saying I'm not going to jail is resisting arrest. Not putting your hands behind your back is resisting arrest. However, it is not resisting arrest with force. That would be called an act of resistance. There is a difference. You can be charged with resisting arrest for simply saying I'm not putting my hands behind my back. Even if the cop comes up and you cooperate when he physically makes you. The point is he told you to do it. You did not do what he said. That was resisting arrest. So a lot of states do like to throw in the loophole resisting arrest with force whenever it comes to actually charging someone with resisting arrest. South Carolina, we don't have that statute. So that's something else also to remember. So at this point, he's just explained everything I said like I thought. He's saying that, yes, while reaching in does constitute a search and a violation of the Fourth Amendment, that A, not only are they allowed to in order to detain him, but there is enough there to say that they had probable cause to make an arrest at that time. You'll see here shortly that probable cause was quickly lost whenever they actually ran his license. White people really do look for any excuse to say that word, don't they?
Yes, ma'am.
They're right. All it would have taken is him complying.
After Mr. Hayes struggles against the officer's efforts to place him in the back seat of the vehicle, the officers put him in leg restraints and inform him that he is under arrest. Although it is unclear whether Mr. Hayes was under arrest when the officers originally attempted to place him in the police cruiser, his actions may have been sufficient to support a conviction for resisting under Section 38.03 of the Penal Code, which,
and this is what I was telling you about before,
criminalizes intentionally preventing or obstructing a peace officer from, quote, effecting an arrest, search, or transportation of the actor or another by using force against the peace officer or another. In the 2014 case of Dobbs versus State, the Court of Criminal Appeals of Texas defined the phrase by using force against a peace officer or another as, quote, violence or physical aggression or an immediate threat thereof in the direction of and or into contact
and basically
with,
this is just the definition of force
a peace officer or
according to
applying
Texas.
This definition in the
Everything has a
case of
definition.
Finley versus State, the same court affirmed a conviction for resisting against an individual who clenched up and pulled his arms away from arresting officers, ruling that this limited use of so-called force was sufficient to sustain a conviction.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit. So basically what he's saying is you've got a situation where you have an individual who, for whatever reason, was legally contacted by the police physically, and they formed a probable cause to possibly arrest this person. However, during that arrest, the individual resisted. Okay? They resisted arrest. So therefore, on top of the original charge, now they've got resisting arrest. Well, as they're working, they realize that that probable cause that was there for the original arrest now is gone. There's a difference between being fabricated and being gone. Probable cause can go away without any nefarious activity, as we see in this exact video. Now, once probable cause goes away for that original crime, that does not make the resisting arrest null and void. You still resisted a legal and lawful arrest. At the time, it was legal and lawful. Therefore, you are now being charged with resisting arrest, even if the original reason why you were arrested is thrown out or is gone, is no longer there, as we see in this video. The guy was legally contacted because a traffic stop. They then formed probable cause by having his name matching the name of a person on a warrant. So then they go to detain him, which is technically an arrest. It is a restriction of your free movement. And from there, he says, oh, this ain't right. You've got it wrong. And he was right. They were wrong. But nobody knew that at the time. And it was reasonable. It was a reasonable assumption. And he resisted arrest, so now he's got a second charge. So whenever they get back and they actually do their due diligence and they say, hey, we're wrong, this guy has a different last name, spelling, whatever, it's not the guy. Well, that is probable cause going away. That is not probable cause being fabricated. Probable cause being fabricated is, I saw that person selling dope when you really didn't. Or I smelled marijuana inside of the car when you really didn't. That's a whole different story. That becomes fruit of the poison tree, and then things under that can be thrown out. However, if he did smell marijuana in the car because you just finished smoking and there's none left, there's no crime there, but probable cause for a crime is there. Now, once the officer searches your car and he finds no drugs, now probable cause is gone. Do you understand? I hope that explains the difference between how probable cause can go away versus how it's fabricated. So in other words, everything they've done here, while maybe not correct, is legal. So let's get back to the video. Also, I really need a second monitor. I am living off a budget here. So if you could go buy my merch, even like and subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing to give me a like and subscribe, gets my stuff out there. And then more people who are interested in merch can actually buy stuff. So help me out.
However, it should also be recognized that Section 9.31 of the Texas Penal Code states that, quote, the use of force to resist an arrest or search is justified if, before the actor offers any resistance, the peace officer uses or attempts to use greater force than necessary to make the arrest or search.
I'm going to go on another little tangent here. This law exists federally, meaning that if an officer is effecting an unlawful arrest against you, you can use whatever force is necessary, to include deadly force, to stop that unlawful arrest from happening. However, where you get absolutely fucked is qualified immunity, because what happens is whenever the backup officer shows up on scene, he is immune from that illegal activity that started the arrest, because as he approaches, all he has to act off of is the information of which he has been provided, which is a traffic stop, and now an individual is fighting and resisting arrest. So what happens is you're going to get shot and killed by the second officer or subsequent ones responding, and they're going to have qualified immunity because they were acting off the information that they had at hand. The first officer, nothing's probably ever going to happen to him because focus is going to be off of him. He's not the one who shot and killed you. Then everybody in the media is going to be having a field day about it, and guess what? You got killed for an unlawful arrest that you could have complied and went to court. Sure, it's going to fucking suck because you're going to lose your job probably, which means you're probably going to lose your house, and you're going to go through a world of hell. I promise. And I hate that it happens. But would you rather survive that and come out on top with a good lawyer and a good lawsuit? Or would you rather die? Because I promise that if you get killed by a police officer, nothing's ever going to happen. Like, yeah, your family may sue, you may hit the news, but it's not going to make change. Where we make change is we hit the government where it hurts. They take all of our money. We need to freaking cripple theirs, okay? So do it right. Fight the right way. Quit being savages. Quit getting out here and showing your ass in the street because it's an unlawful arrest. Anyway, we're going to get back to the video. Sorry, that's my thing. If it's an unlawful arrest, don't fight it. Fight it in court, not the street, because on the street, you do not have the advantage. On the roadside, the person in the uniform has the advantage because they have numbers, and that's just the way it is. There's a right way and a wrong way to do everything, and I hope I can make a difference.
And when and to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary to protect himself against the peace officer's use or attempted use of greater force than necessary. Therefore, Mr. Hayes could potentially defend himself against a resisting charge by arguing that the officers were using greater force than necessary to arrest him.
All right, let's get him up.
All right.
Registrations are off. Ready? 1, 2, 3, up.
Y'all are in big trouble, man. I can't even get up.
He's right. They are in big trouble.
Damn, Bill. Do you see how they doing me?
And right here is where you see it. Oh, she just realized. Sarge, Fubar. I don't see any rank on her.
And his right pocket. And he kept going like this too.
So it's also very important to remember this guy had a gun on him. It was legal.
His driver's license through.
So I'll do a story breakdown in the future if you really, really want me to. But this topic hits very hard to me because I one time arrested the wrong person. It was not my fault. The victim identified a person who he should have known because they were in his family and visited him regularly. He identified the wrong individual as his family member. Somebody who wasn't even related to him at all, just had a similar name. Actually, the same first and last name. And that individual never got convicted. He never even went to trial for those crimes because we realized what had happened. But it messed up his life so much that he ended up committing suicide. So this type of stuff is really, really, really detrimental to me and really important. That's why I'm touching on the same video twice. And that's the biggest thing to remember. The arrest is no violation of the Constitution or his rights. However, where things go bad, and I do not agree with anything, is what happens next.
I didn't give nobody no attitude or anything, sir. Like they say I failed the signal at the stop sign.
The stop sign?
I mean, I was wrong for that. Look how they handled me, sir. I didn't do anything that deserved it.
There was a gun, right?
But I wasn't pulling. I told him I had a weapon. This is my name.
Just to touch up on that, if you didn't hear it, he admitted to not using his turn signal. And he said, yeah, I fucked up on that. That means that the traffic stop was legal. So the only question that we had really is what the basis of the traffic stop was on. He just admitted on camera that he didn't use his turn signal or whatever it was. So therefore the traffic stop was legal. So that was the only question we had. So everything up to this point is legit. Now we're just going to fast forward and go through until we get to the part that I don't like.
Start doing traffic. She's running plates. Okay. I'm like, hey, run that Hyundai, and it pops up red. She kind of looks at it, but by that time we had already lost.
I've talked about this a lot.
She's searching.
Mute your body cameras when you're doing this talk on the side of the road, because a lawyer and people like me listen to it word for word and break it down in our case files, and we find any inconsistency. And what looks bad is in front of a jury of 12 whenever we say, how did he get it wrong on the side of the road after it just happened?
Silvester Hayes, like that's
and we expect him to remember it properly now, 2 years later at court. Quit doing the shit. Mute your mics whenever you talk about your probable cause and your evidence on the side of the road. And now he's probably just going to go through the same stuff that I just told you. If you want to catch it, go to his channel.
On October 16th, 2023, Mr. Hayes filed a lawsuit against the city of Dallas and all of the officers.
You can catch all of the lawsuits and all that stuff. I'll just get to the end of what actually came out of it.
Overall, the Dallas officers get an F for arresting Mr. Hayes without even checking if he was actually the suspect they were looking for, using unnecessary and demeaning force in executing the arrest, and pursuing firearm charges against Mr. Hayes despite determining that his firearm was legal. Although it is possible, or even likely, that a court would determine that the arrest of Mr. Hayes was constitutionally reasonable, it certainly was not quote-unquote reasonable under the ordinary meaning of the word, as the officers failed to determine that they had the right Silvester Hayes in a city of over 1 million people before taking action. Since Mr. Hayes was complying with the traffic stop and voluntarily provided his driver's license, there was no reason that the officers could not confirm that Mr. Hayes was actually the suspect they were looking for before attempting to detain or arrest him.
Let me just touch on the fact that there is a huge difference between rules that are wrote down on paper and how you apply those rules in the real world. Now, ATA goes into a lot of depth. I don't know, he or she, whoever this person is, extremely knowledgeable, probably well educated, and they know the laws on paper. They know SOPs on paper as they have had to come across them. However, applying those SOPs in the real world and those laws is a little bit different than reading them on paper. And I would be hard pressed to learn that ATA has any experience at all actually applying what they teach. Now, that's not bad. We need people from all different spectrums. That's why there's 3 branches of the law. However, there are multiple different views to things. Now, in my opinion, the officers, up until the point that they realized that this individual was not the wanted person, they didn't do anything wrong. They could have done things differently. I would have done things differently, but that's me Monday morning quarterbacking it. However, with the situation, if you have a Silvester Hayes that is a middle-aged black male and he is a violent offender who has had violent tendencies towards law enforcement, and I stop a car for a traffic signal violation and I get his driver's license, and it is a middle-aged black male with the name Silvester Hayes, same name is on the warrant, then yeah, I'm going to take precautions. I'm not going to give him one more up on me. I'm going to go ahead and remove them out of the car make sure that they are detained and that they're not going to be able to hurt me while I figure this information out, because everybody knows what it means when the cops take a little too long to come back to your car, right? Everybody knows that. So I don't think that they deserve an F up to the point where they actually realized that he wasn't the individual that they were looking for. Now, I would probably give them like a C-ish, because I feel like it could have been handled differently. Now, if we know the specific situation, it might go up or down depending on that. However, they didn't do anything wrong. They did just enough.
Had the officers taken this basic investigative step, they would have found that there were no warrants out for Mr. Hayes' arrest.
Very true. And that's why I gave him a C.
The underlying traffic issue. Instead, they chose to immediately escalate the situation by detaining him.
It's not escalation, ATA. Did it escalate? Did it cause the situation to escalate? Yes.
Substantial gap.
But that was Silvester's fault.
Constitutional requirements placed on officers and the standard of good police work that officers should be striving to achieve. Mr. Hayes gets a C+, because although he was clearly detained in a case of mistaken identity, he failed to comply with Officer Guab's order to exit the vehicle and physically resisted the officers on several occasions. Now, while Mr. Hayes could argue that he was acting in self-defense against excessive force by the officers for some of his resistance, his physical opposition to getting in the back of the police cruiser would likely not be justified by this defense, as the Texas statute only allows for self-defense when it is immediately necessary to protect an individual against a peace officer's use or attempted use of greater force than necessary. Although I empathize with Mr. Hayes' reluctance.
In other words, if somebody would have knocked Derek Chauvin the fuck out, they wouldn't have went to jail.
Law, unfortunately, does not require officers to provide this information to citizens, and instead expects citizens to follow orders to exit vehicles, regardless of the officer's reasoning or communication.
Did you hear that? They are not required to tell you why you are being locked up, and they expect you to comply without questions. That's the way it is. Take it for what it is. It's always better to comply and fight in court than it is to fight on the street. If you ever hear me tell you to fight on the street, then we are not in a civilized world, I promise. You're not going to win fighting on the street. Even if you win, you're still going to lose because you've made the situation a whole lot worse.
Likewise, Texas law does not recognize the right to resist an unlawful arrest. And while I do not necessarily agree with all of these standards, until the laws are changed, individuals put themselves in a better position when they simply comply with such orders, arrests, and detentions, and challenge the officer's actions later.
We have the same view on that.
Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic that you would like us to discuss.
So a quick recap. You have a guy who was legally stopped for a traffic violation. Cop goes up and grabs his driver's license, goes back to his car. This is an assumption based off of the evidence that we have. He sees that this individual's name is Silvester Hayes. They know that they have a warrant on a black male approximately the same age, whose name is also Silvester Hayes. They go up to the car. They do not explain to him what they're doing. They just tell him to please exit the vehicle. We are going to detain you. Pennsylvania v. Mims completely allows for that, and there is nothing wrong with that. However, instead of complying, an individual with a firearm in his pocket decided to not comply with their legal orders to exit the vehicle. Therefore, instead of him simply being detained and then figuring out what the problem was afterwards, they had a fight on their hands. That fight, the police are always going to win, and in this instance, they did. Now, the problem that I have is whenever they realize that this is not the same individual that we have warrants on, that's where things went downhill, because here's what happens. If it had been me, I'd have said, absolutely not. I am not locking up this man. I have already caused him enough due harm. If it had been me, I would have told my supervisor, you're going to have to write me up, suspend me, or fire me. But this man was stopped for a traffic violation. I will write him a ticket for not using his turn signal. That way it is on paper and it is documented the reason why he was pulled over and this contact was made. However, we formed probable cause to arrest him for a warrant. Once we got him in, that warrant, that probable cause is gone because we realized the warrant is for the wrong person. If you lock this man up right now, he is going to suffer greatly for a problem that wasn't even his and that he didn't even bring on himself. How many times a day do you not use your turn signal? Imagine not using your turn signal leads to you being arrested for something that you didn't even do. You lose your job, your wife leaves you, you lose your house, you cannot work anymore because this guy was a security officer. This guy cannot work in security ever again. If this goes through, this guy is a felon. Everybody out there knows how hard it is for a felon to get a job, all because he didn't use his turn signal and a cop made a mistake. But instead, what do? They say, we messed up a little bit, but we're going to CYA and we're going to go ahead and charge him with everything that we can. So what do? They charge him with resisting arrest, which by definition is legal. But just because it's right doesn't mean it feels right. That is something to remember. Now, this man should have been released. He should have went home and he should have had a wonderful day. What would have been the worst that would have come out of it? He would have made a Facebook post. He probably would have made a live stream. He may have complained to the department. The officer may have got a verbal reprimand or something that the police department could say, hey, this issue was brought to our attention and we addressed it and it's not going to happen again. But instead of doing that, they decided to go ahead and charge him with all of these crimes that were committed after the officer made his mistake. The only reason why those crimes were committed was because the officer did what he did, which in turn could be termed as entrapment, but then you would still have the whole intent. Intent is a lot of the law. At this point, I am just rambling because, like I said, this is a very, very important topic to me, and I feel very passionate about it. Guys, number one, don't fight on the side of the road. Just do what they tell you to, man. I mean, unless they're telling you to, hey, strip naked and show your butthole to the cars passing by, you should fucking do what they tell you to. Exit the vehicle. Show your hands. Most of these guys, all of these guys want to go home at the end of the day. All of these girls want to go home at the end of the day. They want to go home and see their wives and their husbands and their kids and their mothers and their brothers and their sisters and their parents. And at the end of the day, that's what they want. So they're not going to take any chance at allowing a possible criminal to get the upper hand on them to kill. Cops are dying every day for stupid reasons. People just like you are dying every day for stupid reasons at the hand of cops. Yelling about it, fighting about it, looting about it isn't going to change anything. We can't change until we get educated. Nothing is going to change until we decide to make a difference. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today. I just wanted to react to ATA. I hope that if you do not know who ATA is or you have never seen them before, go check them out. They have an amazing channel. I don't agree with their conclusions 100% of the time. Probably about 90% of the time I agree with the grading. And but they've never said anything wrong that I remember. So go check them out. You can learn a lot from them. Anyway, until next time, guys, peace out.
Boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.